Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I still can't believe I almost died because my mom was too paranoid about the pandemic to take me to the hospital. This happened back in August 2020 when everything was still locked down and everyone was terrified of catching the virus. I was 18 at the time, about to leave for college. During the lockdown, my mom had been extremely strict. I wasn't allowed to see anyone for a whole month, and after that, I could only see my boyfriend. He was 17, and since I was graduating high school soon, my mom finally agreed to let me stay with my best friend for a couple of weeks before college. The only condition was that I had to get tested for the virus before coming back home. One day, while visiting my boyfriend, I started getting terrible chills. I was shaking so badly my teeth were chattering, even under 3 blankets with my boyfriend trying to warm me up. Around 11 p.m., his mom said I had to leave. I told her I didn't think I could even stand up. She apologized that I wasn't feeling well but insisted I needed to go home. When I tried to get up, I immediately threw up in the bathroom. I was shaking and could barely think straight. His mom repeated that I really needed to leave. My boyfriend had to practically carry me to his car because my legs wouldn't work properly. He had to stop 3 times during the 10-minute drive to my friend's house so I could throw up. I called my mom, desperate for help. I told her something was seriously wrong and that I thought I needed to go to the emergency room. She dismissed my concerns, saying it was probably because I missed my mood medication and that I'd be fine. I tried explaining to her that I couldn't even walk and was throwing up everywhere. She just reminded me that I had promised to get tested before coming home and said I'd have to wait it out. When I protested that I couldn't possibly drive across town in my condition to get tested, she coldly told me that wasn't her problem and that she wasn't risking getting infected. I spent that night crawling between my bed and the bathroom because I couldn't walk. My friend was too busy with her boyfriend to help and I was completely alone. I suffered for 3 more days before the vomiting temporarily stopped. Still weak, I somehow managed to drive to get tested, got my negative result, and finally went home. But it got worse. The vomiting started again. And even though I now had access to a thermometer, my mom said my fever wasn't high enough for the emergency room. I was bedridden for 2 more days, barely able to move my legs, constantly throwing up. My boyfriend finally came to check on me and saw how bad things were. When my fever hit 105, he took matters into his own hands. He went to my parents' bedroom and told them I needed to go to the emergency room right away. My stepdad finally agreed to take me. The hospital staff took one look at me and immediately rushed me back, despite their strict virus protocols. After some tests, the doctor came in with the results. He explained that I had one of the worst urinary tract infections he'd ever seen, which had developed into a severe kidney infection. My white blood cell count was dangerously low. He warned that if I had waited another 24 hours, I would have gone septic, and my survival chance would have been less than 50%. I spent 3 days in the hospital on IV antibiotics, followed by a week of the strongest oral antibiotics available. When I was stable enough, I couldn't help but confront my mom. I sarcastically asked if she now thought I had needed to go to the emergency room after all. She stammered that she hadn't known it was this serious. I reminded her that I had told her I felt like I was dying, couldn't walk, and had been throwing up for days. I asked her what exactly she thought had been happening. She couldn't even look me in the eye. The doctor had explained that if I had come in when I first showed symptoms, it would have been a simple outpatient treatment. Instead, her paranoia about the virus nearly cost me my life. Now my mom has completely flipped to the other extreme. Last month I had a slight headache and she tried to rush me to urgent care. I had to remind her that sometimes a headache is just a headache. I guess nearly losing your daughter makes you reevaluate your priorities. I'm a single dad of 3 kids, and we recently moved to this peaceful lakeside community after my divorce. The move was primarily to give my children a fresh start and help them cope with the separation. The lake was actually one of the main reasons I chose this place. It reminded me of my own childhood summers spent swimming and having fun in the water. The community seemed perfect at first. The neighbors were friendly except for this one woman who lived in the biggest house right by the lake. She'd always watch us from her window whenever we'd go swimming, but I didn't think much of it initially. Last weekend, I took my kids swimming as usual. It was a scorching hot day, and several other neighborhood kids had joined us too. The kids were having a blast, splashing around and playing their usual water games. That's when she appeared, marching down to the lake's edge like she owned the place. She immediately started yelling at us to get out of her lake. When I asked her what she meant, she shouted that this was private property and that we were all trespassing. According to her, she owned the lake. The kids stopped playing and huddled closer to me. I've dealt with difficult people before, so I tried to keep my cool. I explained to her that this was a community lake that belonged to everyone who lived here. She got even angrier at that, yelling about how she had lived there for 20 years and supposedly bought the lake when she built her house. I tried reasoning with her again, telling her that's not how it works, and that the lake was public property. That's when she got really threatening. She told us that if we didn't get our brats out of her lake right away, she would make us regret it. When I called her out for threatening children, she made her worst threat yet. She told us she had electrical equipment in her house and threatened to put an extension cord in the water to fry us all like bacon if we didn't leave. The other kids started crying and my youngest was trembling. I immediately got everyone out of the water, not because I believed her threats, but because I didn't want to traumatize the children further. She stood there gloating as we got out, telling us to never come back. She had this smug smile while watching us gather our things, but I wasn't about to let this slide. I pointed out to her that what she just did was a criminal offense. She scoffed at my warning, asking what I was going to do about it, and suddenly changing her story to say nobody owned the lake. When I pointed out her contradiction about claiming to own it earlier, she threatened to call the police. I encouraged her to do exactly that, telling her it would save me the trouble. I had already started recording her on my phone halfway through her rant. When we were leaving, she kept shouting more threats about electrocuting anyone who dared to swim in her lake. I immediately called the police and showed them the video. The police took it very seriously. Apparently, threatening to electrocute children is a big deal. Who would have thought? They arrested her that same day. When they searched her house, they found several extension cords near her back door, which made her threats seem very real. She was charged with multiple counts of criminal threatening, particularly against minors. During the investigation, they discovered she had been illegally dumping her garden waste into the lake for years. The Environmental Protection Agency got involved, and she was hit with hefty fines for that too. She was sentenced to 6 months in jail, 3 years of probation, and had to pay a massive fine. She was also ordered to undergo psychiatric evaluation and mandatory counseling. The judge was particularly harsh because she had shown zero remorse and kept insisting the lake was her property, even after being shown official documents proving otherwise. Her house went up for sale shortly after her arrest. She moved to another state after getting out of jail. The new owners of her house are lovely people who often join us for community barbecues by the lake. The lake is now more lively than ever. The community even organized a big Lake Day celebration last month with swimming competitions for the kids and everything. My children have finally stopped being afraid of the water, though it took some time and gentle encouragement. Sometimes when we're swimming and having fun, I think about how one entitled person nearly ruined this beautiful place for everyone. But instead, her actions ended up bringing the whole community closer together. Though I have to admit we all check for random extension cords before getting into the water, just out of habit now. My parents raised us to stand up for what's right, even when it's not the easy thing to do. When I was in 9th grade back in 2000, our class got a new student. They were different from the moment they walked in, quiet, kept to themselves, and had this distant look in their eyes. Our parents had gotten a letter from the school explaining that the new student had recently witnessed a family member's death in traumatic circumstances. We were asked to be understanding and supportive. The new student dressed differently from everyone else, mostly dark colors, oversized clothes, that looked like they came from a thrift store. They spoke so softly you had to lean in to hear them, and sometimes they'd just zone out completely during conversations. I remember the first time I approached them during lunch. I invited them to sit with us, and they hesitated, asking if I was sure in this tiny, uncertain voice. I assured them it was absolutely fine and encouraged them to join us. I made it a point to include them whenever I could. Between classes, I'd walk with them and chat about normal stuff, music, movies, whatever was on TV, just treating them like any other person. But of course, there were the jerks in our class who couldn't leave well enough alone. The bullies were relentless. They'd loudly mock the new student about their appearance, particularly targeting their clothes. One of them even made a cruel comment about their clothes looking like they came from a dumpster. They'd snicker and make these stupid comments whenever the new student walked by. The new student never said anything back, just hunched their shoulders and walked faster. One day, it got particularly bad. They were throwing paper bowls at the new student during class when the teacher wasn't looking. I watched as the new student's hands started shaking while trying to take notes. After class, when the new student practically ran out of the room, I'd had enough. I confronted the main bully directly. I warned them that I would report their behavior to the principal if they didn't stop the bullying. They scoffed at my threat, asking if I was some kind of bodyguard and declaring they would do whatever they wanted. That's when I delivered the line that changed everything. I told them that when the new student eventually snaps and comes to school with a gun, I wouldn't feel sorry if they got shot. The timing of my words couldn't have been more impactful. The Columbine High School shooting had happened just the year before, and everyone was still processing it. We'd had countless discussions about what drives someone to that point, and here we were, watching history potentially repeat itself. The bully's face went completely white. Their mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water, but no words came out. Their friends suddenly found the floor very interesting to look at. The change after that was immediate. The bullying stopped completely. The bully would actually move out of the new student's way in the hallway. Sometimes I'd catch them looking nervously at the new student, probably wondering if they'd pushed too far already. Over the next 4 years, the new students started coming out of their shell. They still weren't what you'd call popular, but people included them in group projects, and some even started sitting with us at lunch regularly. They started wearing brighter colors sometimes, and their voice got a little stronger. At graduation, they hugged me tight. In that moment, they shared something profound with me, how I had saved their life that first year. They explained how they had been in such a dark place, and I was the first person who made them feel like they belonged somewhere again. We're still connected on social media. They're doing well now, married, 2 kids, working as a counselor for troubled teens. Sometimes when they post about helping kids who remind them of their younger self, I smile, knowing I played a small part in their journey. The bully became a youth pastor of all things. Maybe scaring the hell out of them that day actually knocked some sense into their thick skull. I, 16, never expected to find myself in such a mess when I started dating my boyfriend, 17, 8 months ago. Coming from a strict Southern household, I was raised to be independent and self-sufficient. My boyfriend's family seemed perfect at first. They never disciplined him. They were always together, and they presented themselves as this ideal unit to the outside world. His dad was especially well known in the community as this great guy everyone loved. The red flags started showing up pretty early, but I ignored them because, well, teenage love makes you do stupid things. I found myself paying for almost everything. Our meals, his gas money to drive 45 minutes to see me, you name it. They had this pit bull they kept in a tiny metal enclosure its whole life. The dog had already killed their cat once when it escaped, but they decided it would be a fantastic idea to make it an indoor dog, without any socialization, without any training. During my sleepover at their house, things went south real quick. They had the dog in the bathroom at first, but then decided to let it roam free while I was in my boyfriend's room. I expressed my concern about letting the dog out, but my boyfriend dismissed my worries, telling me I was being too anxious about it. The dog made a beeline for me and jumped on the bed. Next thing I know, it's snarling and lunging at my face. I had to shield myself with my elbow, genuinely terrified I was about to get mauled. My boyfriend's response? He half-heartedly pulled the dog away, letting it escape and lunge at me again before finally putting it outside. Then he just stared at me while I cried. He had the nerve to ask in an annoyed tone if I was never going to come over again after this. When I told him I didn't feel safe and wanted to go home, he just got angry. I called my grandpa to pick me up since my dad would have lost it if he knew what happened. When I was leaving, his parents thought it would be hilarious to bring the dog out on a leash, watching and laughing as it lunged at me while I ran to my grandpa's car. Later, after I demanded an apology, his dad sent me a message on Facebook. He accused me of being dramatic and insisted that if his dog was actually aggressive, it would be living outside. He basically called me a liar about the dog almost biting me. Then it got even better. His mom, who never liked me anyway, started spreading rumors behind my back. She called me a gold digger and claimed our relationship was one-sided. She complained to others about how I was weird and never ate her food. She kept saying I wasn't good enough for her son. I have severe anxiety and take medication that affects my appetite, but heaven forbid I explain that to someone who's already decided to hate me. They had the audacity to insult my two champion bloodline working dogs while defending their aggressive, untrained pit bull and their stray mutt. The mom told everyone my purebred, AKC certified dogs were ugly. When my dad naturally got upset about the whole situation, they forced my boyfriend to cut contact with him. Because apparently a father being concerned about his daughter almost getting bitten is totally unreasonable. His dad eventually dismissed the whole situation, telling everyone that I was blowing everything out of proportion and that it wasn't a big deal. The community might think this family is perfect, but I've seen behind the curtain. The well-liked dad is actually a defensive, irresponsible dog owner. The mom is a judgmental hypocrite who treats me like I'm beneath them. And my boyfriend? He stands there doing nothing while his family treats me like garbage. I got fed up and decided to share some hard truths on social media about their perfect family image, including video evidence of their dog's aggressive behavior that I'd recorded after the first incident. Suddenly, their reputation in the community isn't looking so squeaky clean anymore. My boyfriend sent me an angry text after that, complaining about how furious his parents were and how everyone was talking about them now. He demanded to know how I could do this to his family. I simply replied asking how his family could do what they did to me. I'm done being silent about entitled people who think their status in the community gives them the right to endanger and belittle others. My dad was right. I deserve better than this. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.